Imagine a young man named Tobias embarking on a dangerous journey. He is unaware that he is about to be protected by a celestial being disguised as a simple traveler. He's guided by an angel sent by God. His mission seems larger than he could ever imagine. He faces immense dangers, such as demons and curses. As he fights for his life, he feels there is something much deeper behind his journey. But what is so special about Tobias? Why was he chosen to be guided by an angel? What he doesn't know is that his story is tied to a divine purpose far greater than he can comprehend. Alongside the angel Raphael, he finds himself at the heart of a mysterious plot. This involves redemption, faith, and miracles. What is truly at stake in Tobias's mission? What secrets are revealed throughout his journey? How is he transformed as he faces these seemingly insurmountable challenges? Continue watching to uncover the hidden secret behind Tobias and his divine journey. This is a story of faith, mystery, and miracles. Each step taken reveals more of God's purpose for his life. Don't miss the upcoming moments where the true power of faith will be revealed in surprising ways. In the heart of the Persian Empire, during a time marked by powerful kings and domination over the exiled Israelites, lived a young man named Tobias. He is the son of Tobit and Anna. His family was of Israelite descent from the tribe of Naphtali, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Despite the oppression and hardships, his father Tobit always kept faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He taught Tobias to follow the commandments and live a righteous life. Tobit had been a prosperous and respected man among the exiled Israelites in the city of Nineveh. But his faithfulness to God's law brought him many enemies. For years, he had helped his fellow Israelites by burying the dead who were left to rot in the streets. This was a sign of the empire's humiliation over his people. However, this piety came at a great cost. Betrayed to the rulers, he lost everything he owned and was reduced to poverty. As if that were not enough, one night while resting beside a wall after burying a brother in faith, his eyes were struck by bird droppings. This caused irreversible blindness. The tragedy that befell Tobit became a burden for Tobias. Now it was up to the young man to support the household and take care of his parents. From a young age, he had learned the values of honesty and kindness. But he also felt the weight of responsibility as he worked hard to sustain his family. Tobias constantly heard his father's laments. "Oh Lord, why do you allow so much suffering to the righteous?" Tobit would murmur during the long nights of darkness. Tobias saw the pain on his father's face and wondered what the purpose of it all was. His heart burned with the desire to ease his family's suffering, but he saw no way out. It was then, on a cold morning, that Tobit called him to his side. "My son, there is something I have never told you." Tobias approached, sensing that something important was about to be revealed. "Before my blindness, I entrusted a large sum of money to Gabael, a trusted man in the city of Raguel in the land of the Maids. Now that my life is nearing its end, I want you to go there and recover that money. With it, you will be able to care for your mother when I am gone." Tobias was surprised. Why had his father never mentioned this treasure? "Father, why have you kept this secret for so long?" "Because a man only knows his own strength when he is tested. If I had told you earlier, perhaps your heart would have turned toward greed, not justice. But now I see that you are an upright man. Go, my son, and may the Lord guide your steps." Tobias's heart beat faster. Traveling to the land of the Medes was no simple task. It would be many days of walking, crossing dangerous lands. How could he go alone? As if fate were answering his doubt, that very afternoon, a man knocked on his door. "I heard you are seeking a travel companion. I know the way well and can help you get there safely. My name is Azariah, son of Hananiah." Tobias studied the stranger. His face was serene, his eyes shone with an indescribable mystery. How did he know about his mission? And why had he appeared at that exact moment? Tobit, upon hearing the man's voice, smiled slightly. "My son, this man is a messenger of God. Trust him." Tobias could not deny that he felt something different in his presence. And so, not knowing what awaited him, he began his journey into the unknown. Who was Azariah, and why did Tobit trust him without hesitation? The sun had barely risen on the horizon when Tobias set out with a small sack of provisions and a firm staff in hand. He looked back one last time, seeing his mother Anna wiping away tears as his father Tobit nodded in silence, as if he already knew that this was no ordinary path. Beside him walked Azariah, the mysterious man who had appeared at the precise moment Tobias needed him most. His demeanor was calm, his posture upright. His eyes seemed to shine with a subtle light as they reflected the sun's rays. He walked with ease, as if the weight of the journey had no effect on him. At first, the journey was peaceful. The trails leading to the city of Raguel in the land of the Medes were barren and desolate, surrounded by rocky hills and plains scorched by the dry wind. For the first few hours, silence reigned between the two travelers, until Tobias, uneasy with Azariah's presence, decided to start a conversation. "You said you know this path well, Azariah. Where are you from?" The man gave him an enigmatic look before replying. "I have crossed these lands many times. My father was also a traveler, and with him I learned the secrets of the roads and the dangers that dwell within them." Tobias furrowed his brow. "And who was your father?" Azariah gave a serene smile. "My father, he is known by the righteous and loved by those who follow the straight path. He guides and protects those who trust in the Lord." Tobias felt a shiver run down his spine. The answer was cryptic, but there was something familiar about it, as if he spoke in codes that only the wise could understand. The walk continued, and as time passed, Tobias began to notice something peculiar. Azariah seemed to never tire, while he himself already felt the weight of the journey in his legs. The mysterious traveler moved with firm steps, not sweating or showing any sign of fatigue. Once, when crossing a small stream, Tobias tripped on a submerged stone and fell into the water. Grumbling, he tried to get up but realized that the current was stronger than he had imagined. His feet slipped on the stones, and for a moment he felt desperation fill his chest. It was then that Azariah, with a fluid and precise motion, grabbed him by the arm. With an inexplicable strength, he lifted him as though Tobias weighed nothing. "Be careful, Tobias. There are invisible forces that try to knock us down when we least expect it," the young man gasped, speechless. How did this man have so much strength? And how had he reacted so quickly? A suspicion began to grow inside him. Who was Azariah, really? That night, when they set up camp under a starry sky, Tobias couldn't contain his doubts. While chewing a piece of dry bread, he cast a suspicious glance at his traveling companion. "Azariah, why did my father trust you so much? He barely knew you, yet he didn't hesitate to place me in your hands." Azariah lifted his eyes from the fire and stared at Tobias with serenity. "Because the righteous recognize those who come in the name of the Lord." The young man felt his heart race. That answer was unusual. He knew the journey was not over. He would still have much to face. But now he was aware that everything he had lived and learned had a greater purpose. The angel is gone, but Tobias's mission has only just begun. What does the future hold for him, now that he bears the weight and honor of being a symbol of faith and redemption? The world still needs to hear his story, and the road ahead will be full of challenges that will test everything he has learned. The story of Tobias, as portrayed in the previous chapters, is a true journey of faith, suffering, and redemption. It is not just a tale from ancient times, but a reflection of the trials and lessons that we all face in our own lives, regardless of the era in which we live. Tobias began his journey as an ordinary man, perhaps unaware of the great purpose awaiting him. He had to face physical, emotional, and spiritual hardships, from the loss of his mind to the suffering of his blind father. Each step of his journey was a test of endurance, courage, and above all, faith. His path, initially filled with questions and doubts, gradually became a walk of divine revelations. Each challenge he overcame brought him closer to a greater understanding of his role in God's plan. The central reflection of this story is the power of faith. Faith in the face of adversity. Tobias did not know at the beginning how much his faith would be tested. But as the journey progressed, he realized that the tests were not just obstacles to be overcome. but opportunities to strengthen his trust in something greater than himself. Like many of us, he felt lost, fearful, and doubted the reason for so much suffering. Yet with each challenge he grew. The divine answer, which came in a surprising and revealing way through the angel Raphael, was not just about the healing of his father or the freeing of Sarah from the curse. It was a profound message about the greater purpose of Tobias's life. Something he never imagined, but that was intrinsically linked to his journey of faith. In our lives, we face situations that often seem senseless. Pain, fear, loss, and frustration make us question what we are doing and where we are going. The difficulties may seem insurmountable, and the temptation to give up can be very strong. But like Tobias, we often find ourselves in situations that teach us something beyond what we can see. Just as he was called, we are called to trust and believe that although the trials may seem endless, they are part of a greater plan, a plan that may be far bigger than we can imagine. The story of Tobias also teaches us about the importance of trusting in the divine purpose. Even when we do not understand why things happen, it is important to remember that everything happens for a reason. Every challenge we face is an opportunity for growth, and often suffering is a gateway to redemption and personal transformation. Tobias was chosen to be a symbol of faith, not because he was special, but because he was tested in a way that led him to connect deeply with the divine purpose. This reminds us that we are all called to a greater mission, even when we cannot see the way forward. Today, we live in a world where challenges can continue to be great. Stress, daily pressures, family problems, and personal dilemmas are common experiences for many of us. However, the story of Tobias teaches us that even in our darkest moments, we can find an inner strength that guides us. Faith, love, and hope can give us the courage to move forward, even when the path seems uncertain. Tobias shows us that our faith may be tested, but that by facing our challenges with courage and confidence in something greater, we can discover a deeper purpose in our lives. Just like Tobias, we may be called to something greater than we imagine. We may not fully understand the reasons for our suffering or the difficulties we face, but we can learn to trust the process. Like him, we need to believe that there is a divine purpose guiding us, even when we cannot see the bigger picture. And in the end, just as Tobias was transformed, our faith will be strengthened, our character refined, and our lives will become a testimony to others about the power of faith, love, and redemption. In conclusion, the journey of Tobias is not just a story of personal overcoming, but a universal lesson about faith, hope, and trust in a greater purpose. If we can apply these lessons in our daily lives, we will face challenges with a new perspective and become stronger, more compassionate, and more connected to the divine will that guides us at every step along the way. If you enjoyed this story, 2 more videos of similar Bible stories will appear on your screen. Click to watch them, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. May God be with you. The gentle night breeze tapped against the windows, but nothing seemed to break the moment of deep reflection that had overtaken Tobias and his family. Raphael, now revealed as the Angel Raphael, stood before them, his presence surrounded by a serene light full of heavenly authority. What had been a journey of uncertainties and wonders now became a revelation. But the purpose behind it all was still not fully clear. Raphael, observing the impact of his previous words, took a moment to contemplate the family before him, then spoke in a deep, calm voice that seemed to carry centuries of wisdom. Everything that has happened so far, Tobias, was not by mere chance. Your mission, the tests you faced, the hardships you endured, all the trials the Lord allowed, all of this is part of a great divine purpose. Nothing was in vain. Tobias felt a pressure in his chest, as if the weight of those words had solidified in his mind. He had experienced struggle, doubt, and even unwavering faith in moments of great challenge. But the truth that was now unfolding before him was something he had never imagined. A divine purpose, Tobias whispered, as if trying to understand the implications of it. But I am just an ordinary man, a son of Tobit. Why has all of this been so important? What does the Lord want from me? Raphael looked at him with an expression that reflected infinite patience. He knew that Tobias still did not fully understand the magnitude of his journey. The Lord does not choose the most powerful or the wealthiest, Tobias. He chooses those with pure hearts, those who even in their weaknesses can show great faith. You were chosen because your trust in God, your courage in the face of adversity, your love and dedication to your family. Those are what the Lord saw in you. This made you the necessary instrument for his will to be fulfilled. Tobias looked at his father Tobit, who, although he had seemed to have also understood that the purpose of their journey went beyond mere physical healing. Tobit's gaze was full of gratitude, but also a type of reverence that indicated a deeper understanding of what was at stake. So all this journey was to prepare the way for something greater? Tobias asked, now beginning to see the pieces falling into place, but still with many questions in his mind. But what else does the Lord expect from me? Raphael took a step forward, his invisible wings seeming to extend around him like an aura of protection. He took a deep breath before continuing. The Lord had a plan for your family, Tobias. Not just for your healing, but for the restoration of all the people of Israel. You were called to be part of this plan, to be an example of faith and courage, but your mission is not limited to that. What you and your family have gone through is just the beginning of something much greater. There is more to be revealed, more to be fulfilled. Tobias felt a whirlwind of emotions as he heard these words. His life up until then had seemed like a sequence of moments of trial. But now he was beginning to understand that every step he took, every challenge he faced, had been carefully orchestrated by a greater force. He was not just an ordinary man, but a chosen one. Someone whose role was crucial in fulfilling a divine will that transcended his own understanding. Tobit looked at Raphael, the angel who in his human form had guided his journey. What more did he still not know? What else had Raphael not revealed? Raphael, Tobias began, with a doubt that now seemed to grow within his heart. Why didn't you tell me this before? Why kept me ignorant about my lineage? Raphael tilted his head, understanding Tobias's conflict. Not everything can be revealed all at once, Tobias. The Lord works in mysterious ways. And you needed to go through the trials and the journey to comprehend the true magnitude of what is at stake. Now that you have the answers, you are ready to move forward. Tobias still couldn't fully process the angel's words. He felt small in the face of everything that had been revealed. But at the same time, there was a growing sense of power within him. He was more than a simple man. He was a key to the future of his people. A heavy burden, but also an honor. With the revelation of his sacred lineage, Tobias now finds himself in a new role. What does the future hold for him and his family? And how will he fulfill this divine mission now that he knows the truth about his destiny? The sky was beginning to darken, and the stars slowly replaced the daylight. Inside Tobit's house, the air was still heavy with the weight of the revelations. Tobias, Tobit, Anna, and even Sarah were in complete silence. The soft light emanating from Raphael continued to illuminate the room. But something was different in the air. It was as if the very space around them was preparing for the end of their journey and the beginning of a new era. Raphael looked at them all with unshakable serenity, his face still radiating a supernatural calm. His presence, already so familiar yet majestic, now seemed to hold an even greater power. He knew that this was the final moment, the conclusion of everything that had been predestined, and the start of a new chapter for Tobias and his family. They were about to receive the last piece of the divine puzzle. Tobias felt a whirlwind of emotions inside him. Disbelief, pain, and gratitude mixed in his chest. He still couldn't fully comprehend the weight of everything that had been revealed up to that point. He knew that the truth had transformed him. But now what lay ahead seemed even grander. It was then that Raphael, with a look of profound wisdom, spoke again, his voice echoing like a gentle wind caressing the soul. Tobias, everything you've been through up until now wasn't just a physical journey. It wasn't just to heal your father, to drive the evil from Sarah, or to recover wealth. You were protected and guided because more than anyone could imagine. You were chosen to be a symbol of redemption and obedience to God. Your mission has always been a test of faith. And with all the suffering you endured, you've shown that your faith is greater than any obstacle." Tobias stared at the angel. Each word Raphael spoke seemed to penetrate his soul with an intensity almost painful. He felt as if all the suffering, all the struggles he had faced had a greater purpose. It wasn't just about him nor just about his family. It was about a testimony that would extend beyond his own life. Raphael continued, his voice now softer but laden with divine authority. "Your life will be a testimony for future generations. When difficulties arise, when the people of Israel face trials, they will remember you, Tobias. How you, a common man, were chosen to prove that faith, suffering, and redemption walk hand in hand. That those who walk in faith, even in the shadows of adversity, will reach the light of salvation." Raphael's words seemed to hang in the air, reverberating in Tobias's heart. He understood, but at the same time, he didn't fully comprehend. His mission was beyond anything he had imagined. He was now a symbol, and his suffering, his choices, his struggles would be an example for posterity of the strength that faith can bring. But at the same time, he wondered if he would be able to carry such a responsibility. Azariah, the disguised angel, looked once more at Tobias with a depth that transcended time and space. And then, with a gesture of pure divinity, he prepared to depart. "Tobias, my mission here has come to an end. You are now at peace with the Lord, and your journey, though not easy, is only beginning. You'll be an example of faith to the world. No matter where life takes you, always remember that you have the power to heal, to bring light where there is darkness, to give hope where there is despair. You will be a symbol of redemption, and your story will be told for generations." With these final words, Raphael raised his arms, and in a flash of celestial light, his form began to rise, his presence slowly dissipating into the sky. Tobias, still stunned, watched the angel ascend, as if he were being absorbed by the very light of the sky. He felt in some way that a part of him was also rising, as if the revelation had transformed him into something more than he could have ever been by himself. The room was silent for an eternal moment. Tobias looked at his father, who now smiled with a silent wisdom, and at his mother, whose eyes were closed in a silent prayer, as if thanking for all that had just been revealed. Tobias took a deep breath. He felt something new within him, a strength that didn't come from his own merits, but from the grace of God. The power of the fish's gall had healed his father, but there was something beyond simple healing in the air, a sense that an unspoken truth was about to be uncovered. As the moment of joy unfolded, Tobit looked at Azariah, who had been silently watching everything from the corner of the room.
Do you know where we are going?
The man with his calm but mysterious gaze seemed to be waiting for this moment. "Azariah," Tobit's voice trembled, but his question was clear.
Wait.
"Who are you, really?" The room fell silent. Tobias, still in a state of euphoria, also looked at Azariah, waiting for him to finally reveal what was behind his true identity, the man who had accompanied them throughout the journey, the man who knew exactly what to do at every moment, who had guided Tobias and healed his father with a simple gesture. Could not be just an ordinary man. Azariah, who until that moment had been a beacon of wisdom and trust, now seemed immersed in an introspective stillness. He stepped forward, his expression firm yet gentle, and looked directly at Tobit, who awaited the answer with eyes fixed on him. Tobias felt that at this moment everything he knew was about to change. "I am a messenger of the Lord, sent to fulfill his divine will," Azariah replied with a serenity that almost seemed supernatural. "My mission was to guide you, Tobias, and bring you here so that God's promise could be fulfilled." Tobit and Tobias exchanged looks, both overcome with astonishment. "A messenger of God? What did that mean?
Certain of this, Tobias?
You're not an ordinary man," Tobias asked,
have
trying
no
to
other
understand what was happening. Azariah nodded slowly, his penetrating gaze conveying a wisdom beyond human comprehension. He looked at Tobit and said in a deep and solemn voice, "I was sent to help you and to guide you through the difficulties. Because the Lord has a plan for your family. Tobit's healing was not just a miracle of restoring physical sight. It was the restoration of spiritual vision. The light you see, Tobit, is the light that comes from the Lord. And Tobias, your journey is not yet over. Tobias felt a shiver run down his spine. Azariah was beginning to reveal something much bigger than he had ever imagined. But he still didn't understand. How could he trust someone who seemed to know everything but refused to reveal his true identity? You don't understand, Tobias, Azariah continued, his voice now soft but full of silent power. The evil that Sarah carries is not just a common curse. It has deep roots intertwined with something much older and far more dangerous. And you are the key to breaking it. Tobit, though overjoyed to have regained his sight, also felt the gravity of the situation. So you're an angel? He asked, his voice filled with reverence. Azariah smiled faintly, but did not directly confirm or deny it. I'm not just an angel. I'm a messenger of the Lord with a specific mission for you. And the truth is, Tobias, your life's mission is only just beginning. The Lord has something grand in store for you, something that extends beyond what you have already experienced. Tobias remained silent, absorbing Azariah's words. He had accomplished so much and experienced so many miracles, but now it seemed that the purpose of his life was unfolding before him in a way he had never imagined. Azariah then looked at Tobias and spoke with a firm voice full of compassion. Believe, Tobias, your faith and trust in God have been crucial to bringing us here. But the true mission is still ahead of you. What you've done so far was just the beginning. Now you must walk the path that has been prepared for you, and that will require much more than you can imagine. Tobias, though filled with doubts, felt within him a spark of understanding. What he had done so far had merely prepared him for something greater, something that God desired for his life. But what would that be? He still didn't know. But now, more than ever, he was ready to find out. What does Azariah really mean by something greater? What else is in store for Tobias in his divine journey? Tobias's house was silent, the euphoria from Tobit's healing now giving way to an immense weight in the air. The atmosphere, which had once been filled with joy, now seemed immersed in an even greater mystery. Tobias and his family were deeply shaken by Azariah's words. But he, with an unshakable calm, did not seem in a hurry to offer further explanations. He knew that the moment of full revelation was about to come. Tobit, still with eyes glowing with gratitude from the healing, but now overflowing with curiosity, could not help but ask, "So, Azariah, what does this mean? You are a messenger of God. But what does that really mean for us? Why did you come to our house? Why did you choose our family?" Azariah, with a compassionate look, gazed at each of them. He knew that the truth, deeper than the healing of Tobit, needed to be revealed so they could understand the purpose behind his mission. "I am not a mere traveler, Tobit, nor an ordinary man," Azariah began, his voice serene but filled with authority. "I am an angel, a messenger of the Lord. My mission was guided by God to lead Tobias and help him fulfill what is reserved for him." The revelation fell like a weight upon everyone present in the room. Tobias, who had believed he was accompanied only by a wise man, a mysterious guide, felt the truth invade his mind like an intense light. He looked at his father, who was now dumbfounded with Azariah's words echoing in his mind. "An angel," Tobias repeated, his voice trembling. "So everything that happened, the miracles, the signs, the guidance, was all part of a greater plan, a divine plan." Azariah nodded firmly, with no doubt in his expression. "Yes, Tobias, you were chosen for something great. The journey you have been through, your father's healing, the liberation of Sarah, the restoration of your family, all these things were being prepared by God, but there is more, much more. You are still at the beginning of a mission that goes beyond everything you know." Tobit looked at Azariah with deep reverence, but also with pain in his gaze. "Why us, Azariah? Why our family? We are not special. We are not rich. We are not powerful. What is so important in our story that it attracts divine intervention?" Azariah fixed his eyes on Tobit and spoke with a voice deep. as if each word carried centuries of wisdom. It is not wealth or power that makes a person special, Tobit. The Lord chooses those whose hearts are pure, those who have faith even in adversity. Your loyalty, Tobias, your dedication to serving the Lord, your courage in the face of adversity. These are the true treasures that God sees. The Lord saw in your family the righteous spirit and decided that you, Tobias, would be the instrument of his will. You were not chosen for your strength, but for your faith. Tobias felt an enormous weight on his shoulders, as if a great responsibility had been placed in his hands. He looked at Azariah, now fully aware that his journey was far from over. And what more does the Lord want from me? What else is there for me to do? Tobias asked, his voice full of uncertainty, but also determination. He wanted to understand what his purpose was, the true meaning of the mission that seemed to have been laid out for him from the very beginning. Azariah took a step forward, approaching Tobias, and placing his hand on his shoulder in a gesture of support. The Lord wants you to continue walking on the path of truth and light. But know that your mission will not be easy, Tobias. You will face more challenges, more temptations, more moments of doubt. But if you keep your faith, if you continue trusting in God and His will, your journey will be of great importance, not only for your family, but for the good of all the righteous. Azariah, seeing Tobias's inner conflict, spoke softly. Do not worry, Tobias. The Lord will be with you at every step, and you will not be alone. I will be by your side, guiding you just as I have been sent to help you until now. But remember, you are the key to this mission. Your faith will be the light that will guide many others. Tobias looked at the angel with eyes filled with gratitude, but also with a growing sense that there was much more to be unveiled. He still didn't know exactly what awaited him, but he knew that now he was prepared to face any challenge, no matter how difficult it might be. Cliffhanger, what does Tobias's mission truly involve? How will he fulfill his role in the great story that God has prepared for him? Tobias's journey of faith, discovery, and courage is only beginning, and many mysteries still need to be uncovered. The room was filled with a reverent silence. The young man, in his growing curiosity, could no longer hide his doubts about Azariah's true role in his life. Azariah, Tobias said suddenly, stopping in the middle of the path, his voice low and hesitant. I still don't understand what really happened to me. What did you want to teach me? Because no matter how much I've completed the mission, something still isn't clear to me. I feel like there's something more, something hidden. Azariah stopped beside him, observing him for a moment as if pondering Tobias's words. Finally the man spoke, his tone calm and mysterious, which only heightened Tobias's discomfort. You already know, Tobias, what you seek is not in gold or material wealth, but in the wisdom you have gained throughout the journey. The true purpose of your mission has yet to be fully revealed. What you've discovered so far are just clues to something much greater. Tobias looked at Azariah, his eyes filled with questions. He wanted to understand, but at the same time he didn't know if he was ready to hear the full truth. Tobias's mind was racing, and with every step, the feeling that something was being hidden from him intensified. What did Azariah mean by those words? What more was he meant to discover? Sarah, who had been walking a little behind, stopped upon hearing the conversation. Sensing the tension between the two men, she didn't know what was going on, but she could see the anguish in Tobias's eyes. Tobias, she said softly, approaching him, don't worry so much. You did what was right, and now life is ours to live. What matters is that we are together, free from all the suffering of the past. But Sarah's words didn't seem enough to dispel the fog of doubts that hung over Tobias. He smiled at her, trying to disguise it, but his heart was full of questions. Azariah, noticing Tobias's growing anguish, added something that broke the silence that had settled. The truth will come when you least expect it. The mission you have completed is just part of a greater plan. When the time comes, you will understand completely. Until then, your faith will be your guide. Tobias looked at Azariah, the man who had accompanied him throughout the journey, and felt a mix of gratitude and confusion. He had completed the mission. But what would come next? What more did he need to learn? He felt unprepared for the answer. But he knew something was coming. The wind blew harder, and the trees around them moved gently. The path to Nineveh seemed long, but Tobias couldn't help wondering what awaited him. He had returned, but the true journey still lay ahead. Tobias felt that the truth was about to be revealed, but what he didn't yet know left him restless. The mission was far from over, and the greatest challenge of his life still awaited him. What did Azariah know that he had not yet discovered? The journey back to Nineveh was nearing its end. The hot desert wind began to soften as they approached the hills surrounding the city, and Tobias felt the weight of the journey on his shoulders. He thought about the life that now awaited him. Sarah by his side, his family reunited, and the wealth brought from Raguel. However, there was something deep within him that still wasn't at peace. The feeling that the mission was not truly complete still hung over him. Azariah, as always, walked ahead, his posture unwavering and his steps firm, as if he knew something Tobias still didn't understand. Looking at the man, Tobias felt that the time for revelation was near, but he didn't know what to expect. Tobias, Azariah's voice interrupted his thoughts. When we reach Nineveh, there is something more you must do. Tobias frowned, concerned. What do you mean? My mission with Sarah is already accomplished. The money is with my father. What more is there? Azariah looked at him with a gaze Tobias couldn't decipher. You have something in your possession that can change your father's destiny. The fish gall. Tobias stopped for a moment, surprised. He still carried the remnants of the fish that, according to Azariah, had saved Sarah's life. The liver and heart had been burned as incense, but the gall was still kept. Tobias, although he had fulfilled his part of the mission, couldn't understand how something so simple could do more for his father. The fish gall! But how could this help my father? He has been blind for so long. There's nothing I can do to change that, Tobias said, his voice filled with hesitation. Azariah looked at him seriously, and for a moment it seemed as if the weight of the world was on the mysterious man's shoulders. Then he spoke with a calmness that overflowed with confidence. Faith is the key, Tobias. The fish gall has the power to heal your father's eyes, but only if you believe. If you do not trust in God's power, nothing will happen. The Lord always gives us the means to fulfill his purpose, but it is we who must have faith for the healing to occur. Tobias felt a mixture of doubt and hope. How could he fully believe in something so extraordinary? The fish gall seemed insignificant in the face of his father's blindness. How could such a simple substance restore the sight of someone who had been blind for so long? He looked at Azariah, who seemed more like a shadow than a man, so steadfast in his confidence. I don't know if I can fully believe in this, Tobias admitted, the weight of doubt in his voice. My father needs something more than a simple potion. He needs a miracle. Azariah didn't respond immediately.
Who are you?
Instead, he placed his hand on Tobias's shoulder and looked directly into his eyes. The miracle is within you, Tobias. The faith you carry in your heart is what will bring the healing. Use the gall, and the Lord will do the rest. The young man felt a tightness in his chest, an internal struggle between his doubt and the trust that was beginning to awaken within him. He knew he could no longer ignore what Azariah was telling him. It was time to trust not only in his companion, but in God's promise, which he now saw in every step of his journey. As they reached the gates of Nineveh, the sun was beginning to set. The city was quiet, but inside Tobias, a storm of emotions was brewing. He still didn't know what to expect, but he knew that when he entered his home, he would find his father waiting for him. He couldn't fail. The home was silent when Tobias entered. His father, Tobit, was sitting on his bed as always, in total darkness, waiting for the presence of his son. Tobias approached with the fish gall in his hands, the small vial seeming insignificant in the face of the situation. But as he looked at his father, his heart began to race. He knew what he had to do, but fear still consumed him. Azariah entered right behind, watching closely as things unfolded. "Do it with faith, Tobias," Azariah whispered. Tobias took a deep breath, and with trembling hands, he applied the fish gall to his father's eyes, feeling that in that moment he was offering more than just a simple cure. It was an act of faith, of complete trust in divine power. The silence was absolute for a few seconds. Then something inexplicable happened. A soft light seemed to emanate from Tobit's eyes, and he moved slowly, as if the darkness began to dissipate. Tobit touched his face as if he were feeling the daylight for the first time. His eyes opened and he looked at Tobias with an expression of astonishment. "I can see, my son. I can see again," Tobit exclaimed, tears in his eyes. Tobias felt a mixture of relief and wonder. He had doubted, but the miracle was before him. His father had regained his sight, and everything he had gone through now made sense. The faith he had almost lost had been the key to the true healing. Although the miracle had occurred, Tobias now faces another great question. What more is behind his mission? And what is Azariah's true role? What does he still not know? And what else is in store for him? Tobias's house was engulfed in deep silence, broken only by the breathing of his father Tobit, who for a moment seemed to be in shock from the extraordinary transformation that had occurred. Tobias, still trembling, watched his father with tear-filled eyes. The miracle had happened right before his eyes. Tobit's vision had been restored, and it seemed more impossible than anything Tobias had ever experienced. Tobit, still touching his face and eyes, struggled to rise from the bed, looked around and began to laugh, tears streaming down his face. He turned to Tobias, his beloved son who stood before him, and embraced him tightly. "I see, my son. I see again," Tobit exclaimed, his voice choked with emotion. Tobias, with his heart pounding, returned the embrace, feeling a wave of gratitude flood his being. He didn't know how, but he knew something greater was happening here. A shadowy figure appeared in the corner of the room, writhing, a creature with an indistinct form, its eyes glowing with a red hue of hatred. The demon Asmodeus was there, an indescribable being, its smell of decay mixing with the smoke from the fish. Tobias felt terror take over his body, but something inside him, perhaps the power of the Lord or the strength of his mission, kept him steady. He could not succumb now. He knew he could not be another victim of the curse. Sarah, her eyes wide with fear, stepped back. But it was Tobias who stood tall. He knew something had to be done. He could not just remain paralyzed in the face of such a threat. The demon advanced, but Tobias, his mind clouded by panic, looked toward Azariah, who was silent at the back of the room. Azariah was not physically present, but his presence seemed to be in every corner of the room. He had given Tobias the tools for the battle, but now Tobias would have to use them on his own. With a desperate shout, Tobias lunged at the demon, but as he did, the smell of burned incense intensified. The demon took a step back, as if the scent was repelling it. Its eyes glowed with rising fury, but before it could strike, a wave of energy surged through the room. The demon let out a high-pitched scream, an explosion of rage that made the ground tremble. Suddenly the creature began to writhe, its form distorting, as if being consumed by an invisible force. The smoke that had formed around Tobias now seemed to engulf the demon, like an unyielding prison. The demon's scream grew weaker and weaker, until with one last groan, it dissolved into the air, leaving behind only the smell of burning and the echo of its rage. Raphael pursued the fleeing demon to Upper Egypt and bound it there. Tobias collapsed to the floor, exhausted and dazed. His mind was still trying to process what had just happened, but he knew the worst was not over. The demon had vanished, but the feeling that the battle was not finished consumed him. He felt as though the darkness was still watching him, waiting for the moment when he would let his guard down. Sarah, still in shock, approached him, her eyes fixed on Tobias with a mix of gratitude and fear. She knew he had done the impossible, but she also knew that something much greater was at stake in that room. Tobias slowly stood up, his hands still trembling, as he held the lamp he had used to light the fire. The sense that he had overcome a gigantic obstacle was there, but he knew the evil would not disappear so easily. He had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The demon was defeated, but Tobias knows that the true test is still to come. What else is hidden in the shadows? What will it take to defeat the evil once and for all? The future of Tobias and Sarah still depends on answers that he doesn't have yet. The night was quieter after the turmoil, but the weight of the journey still seemed to hang over Tobias. He had faced the demon, saved Sarah, and broken the curse that had haunted the young woman for so long. The victory was great, but Tobias couldn't shake the feeling that the end wasn't as near as he wished. The silence in the room was comforting but also unsettling. The next morning, Raguel, Sarah's father, approached Tobias with a look of emotion on his face. The old man, with hands calloused by life, was visibly grateful. But there was something more in his eyes. There was a depth of emotion that Tobias couldn't fully comprehend, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. "Tobias," Raguel began, his voice full of emotion, "you saved my daughter from a curse that tormented our family for a long time. I don't know how to thank you for that." Tobias, still stunned from the battle the night before, simply shook his head. He hadn't done it for rewards or recognition, but out of the need to fulfill his mission. However, he couldn't help but feel a warmth rise in his chest as he saw the sincere gratitude in Raguel's eyes. The man, with a firm gesture, stepped back and with a heavy sigh opened a dark wooden chest, adorned with ancient symbols. Inside, there was an impressive amount of gold and silver, precious stones, and other valuable items that could certainly change anyone's life. "I want you to accept this," Raguel said, his voice still choked with emotion. "This is what I have to offer, all my wealth.
Father.
Since now, thanks to you, my daughter is free from torment. May this gift be proof of my eternal gratitude." Tobias looked at the gold and jewels, the sparkle of each piece reflecting the light of the room, but somehow he didn't feel the urge to grab them. He knew that these material goods could be useful in his journey, but his mind was distant, focused on the next stage of the mission. He looked at Raguel and with a discreet smile accepted the gift. "I deeply thank you, Raguel, but for now my path is not yet finished. There is more to be done." Raguel, seeming to understand what Tobias meant, nodded and handed him a small leather pouch that contained the final words of another treasure, the instructions on where to find the money left with Gabael, the man who had a debt to his father Tobit. "This is the next step," Raguel said. "What is with Gabael will be what helps your family regain peace. We cannot let the past continue to torment us." Tobias carefully placed the pouch in his bag, feeling the weight of responsibility grow heavier on his shoulders. Although the gold was significant, the true purpose of the journey seemed always deeper, more mysterious. When the two men parted, Tobias set off for the next stage of his mission. He and Azariah, who had remained silent and distant throughout the entire moment, were now ready to move forward. But Tobias couldn't help but wonder what was the true purpose of all this. Why was he really there? To fulfill a mission for his father? To find the hidden treasure? Or was there something bigger at play? Something he still didn't fully understand. The journey had started as a simple task, but now it seemed shrouded in mystery, as if a new chapter was about to be written. A chapter that could reveal a destiny Tobias hadn't imagined. As the wind began to blow more forcefully, carrying with it the scent of distant lands, Tobias felt an unease. He knew his mission was still far from a definitive conclusion. Each step he took brought him closer to something greater, something beyond any treasure or promise of material wealth. Tobias now possessed the gold and riches that would be vital for his family. But the mission was far from finished. What awaited him in the distant lands? What was the true purpose of his journey? And who really was behind all of this? The young man still had many trials ahead before understanding the true meaning of his task. The dawn in Rages brought a sense of renewal, but also a feeling of unease for Tobias. After everything he had been through, he was now returning to his homeland Nineveh, with Sarah by his side and Azariah, his enigmatic traveling companion, always remaining silent, watching him with a gaze that seemed to penetrate his soul. Tobias felt a strange mix of relief and discomfort. On one hand, his mission was accomplished, or at least it seemed that way. He had the wealth for his father, the promise of a life with Sarah, and the peace of knowing that the curse upon her had been broken. But on the other hand, something still troubled him. It was as though a shadow hung over his mind, a constant feeling that there was something yet to be revealed. The journey back to Nineveh wasn't long. But the days dragged on. The landscape, which had once seemed full of life, now appeared colorless to Tobias. He felt an increasing tension in the air, as if merely returning home wasn't enough to fill the emptiness consuming him. Sarah by his side seemed radiant. Her joy at being free from the curse was palpable, and the way she looked at Tobias with eyes full of gratitude and love should have been enough to soothe his heart. Yet he couldn't ignore the feeling that there was something more, something greater that he didn't yet understand. Azariah has always walked beside them, silent and watchful. He never spoke much, but his presence was striking, as if he knew what lay behind every step Tobias took. What seemed like a destiny of death could be transformed into life if he could fulfill his role. "How can I help?" Tobias asked, his voice trembling but determined. Azariah looked at Sarah, who now seemed calmer, though she still took care in her approach to Tobias. Then he looked into Tobias's eyes and spoke. "The answer is inside you. Just have faith. You are not like the others. You have a greater role to fulfill, and your loyalty will be the key to breaking the curse. But remember, your path will not be easy." Tobias felt a wave of courage rise within him, but he also knew that the future was uncertain. How could he face the unknown, break such a powerful curse, and at the same time protect himself and Sarah? The young man looked at her, who now observed him with a mixture of hope and fear, and with a sigh made a decision. "I will stay. I will not let the curse define our fate." Tobias chose to stay, but the weight of the curse still hung over him. He didn't know what awaited him on the wedding night, but his fate was now intertwined with hers. Would he be able to break the curse, or would he become another victim of the past? Night fell slowly over Raguel's house, and the atmosphere was thick with palpable tension. Tobias was still processing everything that had happened in the last few hours. Sarah's curse, his own decision to stay, and now Azariah, who seemed to be deeply involved in their fate. After a simple meal, Raguel left them to rest, but Tobias felt that rest would not come so easily. His mind was restless, full of unanswered questions, and the most urgent of them all was about Azariah's mysterious behavior. Tobias approached the man who seemed to know more than he should. He could no longer ignore what was in his heart. Azariah was not just a simple guide or traveler. He seemed to carry ancient wisdom and an uncommon strength. But who was he really, and what did he want from Tobias? "Azariah," Tobias began, his voice firm but full of uncertainty. "I need to know the truth. Why are you guiding me? How do you know so much about all this? I don't understand." Azariah was sitting near the fire, his eyes fixed on the dancing flames. He seemed unbothered, as though Tobias's distress was a gentle breeze that did not affect him. For a moment, the silence between them was almost deafening, until Azariah sighed and with a calm motion took out the package containing the liver, heart and gall of the fish Tobias had caught in the Tigris River. "Do you remember what I told you, Tobias, that this would save your life?" Tobias nodded slowly. He remembered how Azariah had ordered him to take those organs and keep them with such care. But tonight he understood that it was not just a simple request. The presence of the fish and its organs seemed to hold a deeper meaning. Azariah took the items in his calloused hands as if they were sacred. Then, with a calmness that seemed supernatural, he looked into Tobias's eyes. "The truth, Tobias, is that the liver and heart of this fish are not mere pieces of meat. They are what allowed me to give you the knowledge necessary to fight the evil that torments Sarah. This fish, it contains the essence of a demon, the demon Asmodeus that haunts her, that kills every man who marries her." Tobias fell silent, stunned. How was this possible? The fish he had caught had become something much greater than he had ever imagined. He didn't know if he was hearing a madman's tale or if the truth was standing before him, undeniable. But why the organs? Tobias asked, trying to understand the connection between the fish and Sarah's curse. Azariah raised the package with the organs, and with a ritualistic movement lit a small flame. He held the items near the fire, watching as the flames began to consume the fish's flesh. The liver and heart must be burned as incense, Azariah explained as the organs began to release a thick, pungent smoke. This smell will drive away the demon who is drawn to the life energy still residing in them. When you burn them, you will be purifying Sarah's soul and dissipating the evil that pursues her. Tobias watched, perplexed, as the fire did its work. The smoke rising seemed to carry with it a sense of supernatural power. He felt an odd sensation that something was changing in the air, something that could not be explained by mere words. It was as though the very air was becoming lighter, purer. As the scent of the smoke filled the space, Tobias couldn't help but think, how did Azariah know this? How did he know so much about that fish and about the curse? And more importantly, who was Azariah really? But you, Tobias interrupted, the question burning in his throat. Who are you, Azariah? How do you know so much? What is your true purpose? Azariah looked at the fire with an expression that now seemed more distant, almost as if he were in another place, far removed from the present. When he finally looked at Tobias, his eyes were filled with ancient wisdom, as if he had lived more than a human life could endure. I am someone who serves the Lord, and the Lord sent me to guide you, Tobias. But more than that, he sent me to help you fulfill the greater purpose that you cannot yet see. Your journey is just beginning, and you still do not know who you really are. Tobias felt a shiver run down his spine. Azariah was beginning to reveal something much bigger than he had ever imagined, but he still didn't understand. How could he trust someone who seemed to know everything but refused to reveal his true identity? You don't understand, Tobias, Azariah continued, his voice now soft but full of silent power. The evil that Sarah carries is not just a common curse. It has deep roots, intertwined with something much older and far more dangerous. And you are the key to breaking it. Tobias looked at him, confused and shaken. There was no longer any doubt that Azariah was more involved in all this than he wanted to admit. But who was he really? What did he mean to this mission? He didn't know if he was being guided by a man of faith or by a darker figure who manipulated events in silence. As the fire consumed the fish's organs, Tobias knew that his life would never be the same. He was about to face choices he might never fully understand. Who is Azariah really? What does he know about Tobias? And what is the true role of the young man in this mission? The answers seem farther and farther away, and Tobias feels like he's walking toward an unknown destiny where every decision could change everything. The night was heavy, thick with a dense silence, as if even the air had bowed before what was about to come. Tobias and Sarah were in the room prepared for their wedding night. A simple yet cozy space lit only by the soft flame of a few candles. The fate of both was about to be sealed. But Tobias knew this would not be an ordinary union. The evil that haunted Sarah was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Tobias took a deep breath and with trembling hands removed the package containing the liver and heart of the fish. The smoke from the burned organs still lingered on his clothes, but now he knew what he had to do. He knelt before the small table prepared for the ritual. With an anxious look, he stared at the candle's flame. Sarah stood silently, her eyes heavy with the fear that Tobias felt in his own chest. They exchanged no words, only gazing at each other, as if both knew that something beyond their understanding was about to happen. The room seemed darker as Tobias prepared to throw the organs into the fire. When the moment came, Tobias threw the liver and heart into the candle's flame, and immediately a strong, bittersweet odor filled the room. It was a strange smell, something Tobias had never experienced before. mixed with the essence of the burned fish and something else, something supernatural. The smoke rose like a thick curtain, filling the space, and a sense of pressure began to weigh down on Tobias's chest. Sarah stepped back, her expression of anguish deepening. She knew something was about to happen. Tobias felt the air suddenly grow cold, as if the heat from the flame had been consumed by a colder, darker presence. It was then that the scream came, a horrible scream, as if hell itself had opened before them. It was an indescribable sound, as though the walls of the room were being torn apart by a power that could not be comprehended. Tobias jumped back, his heart pounding in his chest, as the room filled with a monstrous presence. What did Azariah really mean by that? Who was Azariah? How did he know so much about the roads and possess such strength? Tobias felt that something was hidden, but he didn't yet know what it was. Before continuing, we ask for your collaboration. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video to bless us, and keep spreading these Bible stories. Now let's continue Tobias's journey. The heat of the day intensified as the travelers crossed a vast expanse of sand and stones. The Tigris River was now behind them, but the journey to the City of Rages still seemed like a long way ahead. Tobias felt the weight of every step, his feet weary from the crossing and the struggle with the fish, dragging slowly along the trail. The landscape around them offered no comfort. Just a vast stretch of barren land where the sun's scorching heat battered mercilessly. After hours of walking, Azariah finally pointed to a small oasis, an area shaded by some dry bushes where they could rest. Tobias collapsed onto a flat stone, feeling the dust cling to his skin and exhaustion take over his body. He looked up at the sky where the clouds slowly dispersed, as if trying to hide from the burning sunlight. It was hard not to feel the weight of the mission he carried. "We need to rest, but we'll continue soon," Azariah said, his expression unchanged. Tobias didn't respond immediately. He felt a storm growing inside him, not only from the physical exhaustion, but from the psychological pressure this journey was imposing. He knew the mission was important, but a disturbing doubt began to surface in his mind. Was he truly capable of bearing the weight of this responsibility? He couldn't stop thinking about his home, his mother Anna, and the peaceful life he had left behind. It all seemed so distant, so unreal now. The journey, with its dangers and challenges, was becoming more and more oppressive. Azariah sat next to him, watching him in silence, as if he knew exactly what was going on in the young man's mind. Tobias, unable to keep his thoughts to himself, finally spoke. "I don't know if I can keep going. All of this, it's too much. Maybe it's better to go back. Maybe I'm not the chosen one for this mission. I'm not strong like you, Azariah. I can't face what's ahead." Azariah remained silent for a moment, as if contemplating Tobias's words. Then, with the same calm and unshakable demeanor he was known for, he spoke. "The path you walk is not easy, Tobias. But if it were, it would have no value. You were chosen because your faith will be tested, not for what you are now, but for what you can become. The Lord does not call the strong. He calls those who have enough faith to walk, even when the weight of the journey seems unbearable." Tobias lowered his head, feeling his heart tighten. He knew what Azariah was saying, but still the doubt remained. He didn't feel prepared nor strong enough. He felt that the mission was beyond his strength. "But what if I fail?" he asked, his voice choked with anguish. "What if I can't fulfill what's been asked? What will happen then?" And Azariah stood up, looking toward the horizon. His expression seemed serene, but Tobias could feel the intensity in his presence. Failure only happens when someone gives up before trying. The doubt you feel now is your first great temptation. It challenges you to abandon everything, to turn against what you believe. But true faith is not the absence of fear or doubt. Faith is continuing to walk even when you don't see the end of the road. Tobias looked at Azariah, trying to understand the weight of those words. But as the hot wind blew across the desert, he felt an emptiness within himself, a sense of powerlessness. The weight of the mission was crushing him, and he didn't know how to move forward. "I don't know if I have the strength to continue, Azariah. Tobias's voice trembled, but he could no longer hide what he felt. "Everything is so heavy, and I'm so far from home. I just want to go back." Azariah did not answer immediately. He took a step toward Tobias, and with silent firmness extended his hand. "You were chosen, Tobias, because you don't yet know the strength that resides in you. The Lord does not demand perfection, but loyalty and trust. If you have enough faith to take a step forward, even in doubt, you will find a strength you didn't know you had." Tobias looked at the extended hand. The weight of the decision was before him more than ever. He felt the turmoil in his chest, the struggle between doubt and loyalty, the desire to return to the comfort and security of home, and the responsibility to move forward as he had been told. For a long moment, nothing happened. The wind blew, lifting small clouds of dust into the air. Then, with a slowness that seemed almost painful, Tobias extended his hand, and as he touched it, he felt something shift within him. A small flame of determination, still weak but present. "I will go," he said, more to himself than to Azariah. The mysterious man nodded, a slight smile appearing on his face. "You made the right decision, Tobias, and now move forward. The journey is just beginning." Tobias took the first step to overcome his doubt. But the journey was only beginning. The weight of the mission would grow even heavier, and he would need more than faith to face the challenges ahead. How would temptation affect him along the way? The journey to Raguel's house had not been easy. Tobias and Azariah had faced more hardships than he had ever imagined possible. But finally, what seemed like the end of the journey was within reach. The stone walls of Raguel's house rose against the horizon like a shelter in the midst of vastness. Tobias couldn't help but feel relieved to have finally reached this place, where he could rest and perhaps find an answer to the mission that had brought him here. Upon entering the house, they were greeted by Raguel, a man of imposing stature with eyes that carried an expression of sadness and despair. The man's demeanor clearly reflected the burden he carried, as if something weighed heavily on him, and he did not know how to alleviate it. Raguel led them into the house, where in a room decorated with rugs and simple furniture, Tobias saw a young woman sitting in a corner, her eyes fixed on the ground. She had dark, wavy hair, and her face, though marked by sadness, displayed serene beauty. When she lifted her eyes, Tobias felt a shiver run down his spine. It wasn't just Sarah's beauty that touched him, but a deep sense of compassion and unease. There was something about her, something that couldn't be explained by words alone. Raguel introduced them. "This is my daughter Sarah." His voice faltered as if he had difficulty speaking about what had happened. "She has been cursed by the demon Asmodeus." Tobias looked at Azariah, who remained calm. But his eyes were fixed on Sarah, as though he knew the weight of the story hidden there. Sarah looked at Tobias with sadness in her eyes, without saying a word. But inside, Tobias felt an instant connection with her. He couldn't explain it, but something in his heart told him that she needed him. He felt an urge to approach her, to protect her. Azariah broke the silence, placing a hand on Tobias's shoulder, as if sensing the thoughts forming in the young man's mind. "Sarah has been cursed, Tobias. All 7 of the husbands she has had died on their wedding night, and the same fate awaits any man who tries to marry her. But you cannot let her bear this burden alone." Tobias felt a knot tighten in his stomach. How could he get close to Sarah, knowing what had happened to all the other men? The fear of being another victim of the curse was almost palpable. His thoughts were in turmoil. He looked at Sarah, and the fear intensified. Could he be the next to fall into this tragedy? He barely knew what to do with his own feelings, now that he knew about the curse hanging over her. Sarah stood up, walking towards him with soft steps. And before Tobias could speak, she whispered in a soft voice, yet marked by deep pain, "I am not worthy of love, Tobias. All those who came before you, they died. I am the reason for their deaths, and I know the same will happen to you. I am cursed. Please don't come near me." Those words struck Tobias like an arrow. His heart tightened at the anguish and suffering of Sarah, and at the same time, he felt an overwhelming compassion for her. How could he leave her to face such a terrible curse alone? He wanted to protect her, to help her, But fear still held him back. Azariah, sensing Tobias's inner struggle, approached him and spoke in a firm but gentle tone. "What you feel for her is real, Tobias, but you are not like the others. It is no accident that you have come this far. Your faith, your pure heart is what will save her." Tobias looked at Azariah, his eyes seeking answers. He no longer knew who to trust. But something in Azariah's words stirred a flame of hope within him. He couldn't be another victim. He knew he had something greater to fulfill here.